Well, okay. We're all here. We're all ready, right? Yes. We are going to be having some conversation about conversation today. I'm real excited for you to be here. Thank you for coming today. It's a nice day out here. At least we're not going through pouring rain like it's been earlier this week. We're going to go ahead and get started. A couple of things I just want to make sure. Does everybody have a handout? We have a new person at the desk up there. Actually, not a new person, but he hasn't done it for a while, so we want to make sure everybody's got a handout. You're all good? Y'all got a red ticket? Great. Okay. Awesome. Then can you all hear me okay? Perfect. All righty. Well, then let's go ahead and get going. So today, conversations with your adult children. Strategies for healthy communication or conversation. You know, the reason that we brought this up is that it's one of those things that as John and I or Paige go on a consultation, a lot of times what we hear feedback-wise, well, I don't know. I really need to talk to my kids. My kids are running the show. They've asked me what I thought, but I don't get to tell them anything that they're listening to. So we thought this would be a really great opportunity for us to share some tips with you if this is what's happening for you now. In addition to that, what I want you to know is that we plan to have a workshop on the weekend coming up soon. We don't have the exact date nailed down, but next month we're going to have a workshop on a Saturday that the adult children can come to, because a lot of times they don't want to come to a seminar because they're doing what? Working. So we're planning to do a follow-up on this, which would be the reverse for different tips and techniques for you to have a healthy communication with your parents. How many of you think that, those of you that have adult children locally, how many of you think that they would come or be interested in that? One person. Well, we're really hoping we can encourage you that there'll be more than one. There's two. Okay, good. All right, good. This is some information about our team. I'm Ingrid Sullivan, for those of you that don't know me. I'm the team lead for the Sullivan & Sullivan real estate team, and I'm a right-sizing expert, meaning I've spent extra time learning about my niche, if you will, which is 55 and older, and different things that are important to us as we age when it comes to right-sizing. John Sullivan, who greeted you at the table back there and gave you your handout, is my business partner and my partner in life, 44 years. He is also a right-sizing expert. And then we have Paige. Paige first. Paige may have helped you find your seat or made sure that you had the right materials with you. Paige is also on our team, and she is a right-sizing expert. And then we have Debbie Ford. And a lot of you that have been coming with us for some time, this is our 9th season. Debbie's the person that you call because you want to register. Or she's the person that you call to let her know you're bringing a friend, or you can't make it today. So Debbie's back here in the back. Debbie, raise your hand. They can all see that wonderful voice on that phone. She's our contact person. She's our operations manager, and she puts together a lot of the materials that you have today and a lot of content for the seminars that we do together. Just quickly, this is our business model, just so you kind of know what do you do, why do you do this, and I will tell you that the reason that we chose to go the direction that we do is because we started with our own parents, and we knew that at the time that we were helping them make decisions about less stuff and smaller places, we knew that we needed other individuals to work with us. So we have partnerships with home repair contractors, estate liquidators, movers and packers, a lot of retirement communities that we work with, home care, health care, as well as legal and financial planners. All of these people work closely with us, and they're vetted partners for us. So if you're ever in a need for something like that, rest assured that if you call, I need a name for someone, I need a name because I want to look at my financial planning, or I'm talking to my CPA and I might want to do something different. All of these people that we work with have been with us for some time, and they have your best interest at heart as well. What I'd like to do next is I would like to introduce our experts that are here with me today for our topic, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. I'm going to ask Julie Davis, who's with Concordia Life Community, to come up and share a little bit about her background. As like I said, she's going to be one of our speakers today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. As Ingrid shared, I am with a life plan community, but it is in Oklahoma City. I don't know how many of you are familiar with life plan communities or CCRCs. If you are a repeat offender of coming to Ingrid's classes, maybe you've heard about those. But anyways, for those who haven't, we offer everything from cottages to nursing, all on one campus. And I've been doing this at that location for a little over 10 years. And prior to that, I was in the Plano market with a senior living community that was independent only and luxury. And so, anyways, and I worked with the YMCA before that. So I've been working with seniors most of my career.
Okay, great. Tony, come on up.
Hi everybody, I'm Tony Sievers. I'm the founder of Parent Projects. As a first career in life, I was a military officer that worked in emergency management and then had a parent project. I had a family member, a grandparent actually, who needed some help up in Sedona. I'm based out of Phoenix in Arizona, and my mom asked if I'd help. And the process of going through that for me and my family was really, really hard. I'm sure nobody in here can understand that, right? By 2019, God just kind of tickled my ear that this was where I needed to apply some thought and to help families be able to lean in culturally to help our families age as our parents and our grandparents get older, and that we could use technology to do that. So Parent Projects is a technology platform that adult children use to carry out the wishes of their parents and to help lean in instead of taking over when you're in the middle of that chaos of an emergency management situation.
That's great, thank you. We'll be actually at the very end of our presentation today, we'll have an opportunity to have Tony share a couple ideas and things about Parent Projects, which we are now partners with them as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And what I want to let you know as we're beginning today, couple of things that I forgot housekeeping-wise. Let me just back up on that real quick. What we noticed in this classroom, and for those of you that have been with us for a while, this is a different classroom than we've been for the last 5 years. We've had round tables, so it was really great to come here. But we wanted to make sure that anybody here that has a walker, wheelchair, needs to get in and out easily. At the end of the rows, what we put up today was we put a sign that said this seat is reserved for, and for someone that's needing that kind of access. So when you saw that, you'll see that going forward because we want to be accommodating. The other thing that we've done is that over time, we have had individuals come, and there's always been the comment about hearing. I couldn't hear what they said. I couldn't understand what they said. So we want to make sure and be accommodating there as well and actually provide seating for individuals that need that. And I'll share just a little backstory real quick on that. I'm currently recovering from a severe sinus infection. Those of you that know me, I might sound kind of nasally still. And what's happened is it has impacted all the low tones for me. So now when people are talking to me, if they're talking really low or not talking, I can't hear that very well. I'm hoping that that's going to go away soon. But I know that there are others that's not a temporary thing. It's something that's an everyday occurrence. So we just wanted you to know that we're paying better attention to that going forward. Also, how do we come up with the speakers and the topics that we have for you? And I want you to know that we spend a lot of time doing this. There are a number of people across the country that have the same type of seminars that we do. Some, the ones that I just left, they have as many as 250 people at one time come once a month to their seminars. But we all talk to each other and learn about what are the best ways to deliver information. So when it comes to How do we select our topics? How do we select our speakers? What we generally do is we reach out to the people that we think would be the best communicator for the topic that we have of the day, like we have here today, and we ask them, what kinds of questions do people have when they meet with you? What are the top things that they want to talk about? Top 10 items. And then we take their feedback and we marry that together with the layout, or the script as Debbie would call it, for the seminar. So we've spent time with both Julie and Tony talking about this subject and asking them different things about how they've received that information or questions they've had. So we're going to be working it that way, just in case you were wondering, where do they get this information? So the first question that I have here is, what are the most common communication breakdowns? And actually, I do have a microphone for each one of you. I know. Thank you, Carlos. What are the most common breakdowns for communication between aging parents and their children? I mean, if you just take a minute and think about that, what is it that takes place that's really frustrating for you? And Julie, I'm going to ask you first. What could that be? What are the most common?
Well, I think what I see a lot is relationships that haven't evolved. And what I mean by that is we have adult children who either still see themselves as adolescents, or parents that still see them as adolescents. And then the other one is assumptions, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about.
We are, absolutely. How about you, Tony?
We're with our parents. I'm a parent of 5 kiddos, and I think as an adult and as a parent, you want your kids to see the best version of yourself when you're raising them and they're younger. So we spend 18 years showing our kids hopefully the best version of ourselves, right? And then 40 years goes by where we've lived different lives in different contexts of how we accomplish things, some of the same things. And so just not having that, we're not coming from the same place, but we all think we do because we spent those first 18 years together, and little did they know. I only saw what I needed them to see at that point in time to grow up and not die on me. So that becomes a difficult thing to reapproach.
Well, it does, because what you're wanting to do is look forward and take action for moving forward, and they're not exactly sure where they fit in that.
Right, and they have to catch up.
Right. Exactly. So moving forward then, we talk about assumptions. What assumptions do families often make that lead to conflict and management? So that's the hard thing. That term assumptions, we've all heard so many things about what does that mean. It happens accidentally, it happens on purpose. Tell us a little bit more about that, Tony.
Well, just following on that, so if we've got different life experiences, I think there's a misnomer that we think we're all going to be starting from the same place when we come back to the emergency. And so you put it off because they think, well, they can understand how we do this, or this is how we always did this in the family. I think, their network, what's going on around them, life going on around them, kids going on around them, other crises or great things that are going on in their life are impacting how they're going to tackle that at that moment. So if it hadn't been talked about ahead of time and laid down, which happens, and it's going to happen, and you have to kind of let the grace of that wash over you. You just have to expect not to be too surprised by that and roll with it, I think, at some level. There's preparation is obviously key, yes. But not to be surprised up front. I think we assume that we're going to start from the same place we started.
Well, and I would say just kind of speaking for myself personally, I mean, I have one son, and he's super busy with my granddaughter being in theater, my grandson being in baseball now, and they're both self-employed, they have their own businesses. So my assumption would be, and I guess we'll see on Sunday, right, Mother's Day, my assumption will be that I'm going to be top of the list, most important person that they're going to want to see that day. Do you think that's an assumption that I'm making? Yeah, you're laughing. Probably. But that assumption then could also lead me to get my feelings hurt because I want to be that person at the top of the list, but I know I've got another mother-in-law and a grandmother that I'm competing with, but I want them to still know that his dad and I are out there. We may not live in their household, we may not be communicating with them every day, but we're still out there, and we want to feel like they know we're there. Julie, what can you add?
I think just in my experience, one of the things that I see that can be a real conflict and cause a misalignment is the assumption of roles in gender or birth order. We see people who name their oldest as the executor of their will, or they name their daughter, who's a nurse, as their power of attorney for medical, but she lives in Arizona and they live in Texas. So that could be a problem. It's not that she's not equipped, but she's not close by. So those kinds of assumptions, I think, can sometimes cause problems. I think that we discount the importance of emotional intelligence and where people are in their lives. So.
Well, I think also choosing that way, I'm going to choose my oldest son or my oldest daughter. I remember back to a seminar that we had a few years ago, and we were talking about executors of the estate. And one of the gentlemen in our seminar raised his hand and he said, that's a really important role. And before you identify somebody or think you're blessing them with that role to handle your affairs, you need to really take a look at what's involved and are they capable of doing that, and give them an opportunity to say, it's not me, it's going to be her, kind of thing. I'm the oldest of 4. My brother was the one that my parents chose to have handle their affairs. And for some of us in my family, they were offended by that, because why didn't they choose me? I'm the one that they talk to every day. So I would say that falls in that same area.
Yeah, can I add, between those, one great example, like practical example of a family here is one of our clients knew that I was talking to as a senior move manager in front of Parent Projects. They had chosen their daughter to help process their stuff. They had some stuff. They had a lot of stuff. But they chose that because they knew their son was just going to throw it all away. Like he didn't value it all the same way. The challenge, though, was the moment that had to be done, mom was gone, and dad couldn't stay there. They had to get dad someplace safe, and they needed to move pretty quickly against that process, as quickly and safely as dad could do that. The daughter was the one absolutely to be able to go through in the keeper of history for where those things had gone, but the pace at which that she could exercise that emotional intelligence that made her perfect for that task did not work under the timeline in which they were given. And that became a stress between the brother and her, because brother's financial power of attorney and they're bleeding cash. And he's just trying to make these good decisions there. So thinking about that as well, the context of, hey, this is a great person to do this when things are calm. This is a great person to handle this when it's in fire. And like we're moving and I want that person to do that. And that might be a different person. It might be a different person, different skill set.
I think you answered some of that with our next slide, Tony. So what kinds of conversations tend to happen too late? Let's think about that for a minute. And what should have happened earlier? We recently just had, Debbie, if you don't mind that I share, we just recently had an event in our office. Debbie just recently lost her mom, and through that, there were conversations that were had that really should have happened a long time ago to be better prepared. And you know, it's well, okay, Debbie. I might need you. There we go. Okay, I'm back on track. Really, it would have made things a lot easier for her and her family had that conversation taken place, because in her mother's situation, she found out that she was ill, and within 3 weeks had passed, and nobody really had an opportunity to digest that and what to do next. Everybody was kind of working off of, I hope this is the right thing. Would you agree? Yeah. So add to that.
I went through a similar situation. My dad's diagnosis was not as quick, but what we were able to do as a family is we had conversations prior to him being ill. And it made all the difference in the world, because when we did have that circumstance come up, we were prepared. And we were on the same team. And it made for a much easier transition and ability. And I think that the takeaway for us was that, and then this is what I told my dad, because my dad was a very private man, and to Tony's point about wanting to give the best version of yourself, he's your daddy, he's strong, he's a protector, all of those things, right? He had a diagnosis 10 years prior of prostate cancer. That's beatable, we can do it, but he didn't tell us. He didn't tell us until he knew he was going to be going through treatment that would have given him up because he was always on the golf course. And we would have been like, why aren't you on the golf course? Because something's wrong. So I said, Dad, can we agree that we're on a team? And I can't be on your team if I don't know what your wishes are. So I need you to tell me what your wishes are, what your desires are, what your game plan is, because I can't be on your team if I don't know. And I'll do the same for you. I promised him. I said, if I have breast cancer, I'll let you know. We don't have to be in each other's business, and I don't have to manage you, but we need to be on each other's team. So, yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Tony?
You know, I think we also recently going through the extreme exercise of COVID, right? And going through COVID, we found that even if a family member had a power of attorney, let's say they had a medical power of attorney, if they weren't informed on what was happening in your life, to where the doctor asked the question, that person looked at them not in a stareless gaze, but like, yep, I understand what's going on, we're here, these are the medications and working. The doctor tended to not go by that power of attorney. He made a decision, or she made a decision, because they felt that's what needed to happen. So it's not an action past, action complete. I think we do see that a lot. We're going to talk a little bit later about solutions to this, by the way. If you don't have a kiddo that has worked in and around industry like we have for dozens of years, there are ways in other family things, some ways to have some conversations here. And that's what we're here today, I think, to get through some of that. But the conversation isn't always delegation. The conversation is for them to understand, in your absence, will they make the decision that you would likely make? And do they feel that they could do that confidently without doing that in guilt and fear? Right?
So I'm just kind of curious as we delve into this. How many of you have started the conversations with your family? I think that's great. And I will tell you that I think since COVID, that has been the trigger for a lot of people that have said, oh gosh, we better make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and what they're doing. So if we have another event like this, we're going to be able to handle it better and it won't be a surprise. And that's the most important thing that we can do.
And think off of that, if I could, this is not, do you pull the plug, do you not pull the plug?
Right.
When you walk this through, think about, hey, this is where my dog should go.
Right.
Like at that level, okay?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
just the common things so that when you come back out of the hospital, you don't come back to a wreck. Everything's kind of there. You're going to need that time to ease back in. There'll be professionals, like a lot of ones that are back there, that'll be there to help you through that. But those are things you don't want to be figuring out.
Yeah, absolutely. So examples of challenging family dynamics.
Go ahead.
I'll let you go first.
I don't understand the giggling.
I
mean,
know.
family's awesome.
All families get along and they all agree on everything.
I love
My
it.
experience.
I'm an Army officer. My family will do no. It's not. You know that there's obviously birth order plays some role organically. It's pretty. The Marsha, the middle child is a real thing. I'm watching it go down right now with a son. But no, I think in those main family dynamics, distance that in the relationships have played a huge role, right? And so if the siblings, they're not going to be operating like a family unit when you were all in one home. They've lived different lives. They, apart from you, might have completely different views of how to tackle a particular task. The key story I put on is how a client literally moving a picture at the top of the stairs slowed the move by over 2 weeks. A picture. And it was because, and it caused all kinds of chaos between brother and sister. The brother was mad because it was a thing that needed to be dealt with just to get it off to who was going to be gifted to, was going to an aunt. To the daughter, to his sister, she could not get over that picture reminded her of her dad at an event walking her down the stairs for her first dance. And that was, I mean, no guy's going to get there. Just so you know, like our brain's not naturally going to think that same way. So those challenging dynamics, they're real. Account for them. Give space for them to be accounted for. But I think that's probably one of those natural things we
I would agree. I would agree. Did y'all notice that inside your handout there is an insert that Debbie put in there for you that has each one of the questions that we're talking about, or slides today in case you want to take a note about it? Just wanted to make sure you knew that. Julie, how about you?
Well, I've got lots of stories, obviously you can imagine, being in the industry that I'm in. But I think that one of the ones that is important to share is about my friend Alvin. Alvin and Jean moved from, they were in Kansas. And his son Stanton was my age. We actually were in high school together but didn't know each other. So we had become pretty good friends. And Alvin, at the time, was exhibiting symptoms of AFib, but he didn't know that's what it was. And he also had diabetes, which he did know. So it's Friday afternoon, he's having an episode, they call 911, 911 shows up, and the paramedic says, well, Mr. Zeff, based on your vitals here, would you like us to take you to the hospital? Now, I all but kicked this guy that said that. Because I'm going to ask you right now, anybody in here want to go to the hospital? No, that is not the question. So, of course, Alvin, being in control, needing to be in control, said, no, I'm fine, it'll be all right. I'll just go talk to my doctor on Monday. I stepped in and I said, Alvin, Stanton's out of town. Jean can't drive. I'm not going to be here because I'm going home for the weekend. If you have another episode, you're going to stress Jean out. She's worried about you. So I'm going to rephrase this. Do you think you should go to the hospital? He conceded and said he agreed. I say all this because it was a need for Alvin to shift his perspective. He was not thinking about Jean and what his decision might mean to her. So, again, going to people not always agreeing, right? We all have different perspectives. So it's okay that we don't agree on things, and maybe the way you do it isn't the way I would do it. But we need to respect each other's decisions and understand that our decision has implications far past ourselves, right? Yeah.
I have a similar story. I had a couple of daughters actually call me, and they wanted me to come and meet with their family here in Arlington because the parents were really needing to make a change. Dad had dementia in the beginning stages, and they wanted to talk about what can we do, and they had already picked out a retirement community that they wanted to move to, but they picked it, the parents didn't pick it. So we got together and I sat down with the daughters and they let me know at the same home with the parents, and they let me know what it was that they wanted to do, what was happening, and who was in charge, but it wasn't the parents. So we had that conversation, we made a tentative plan, and then it was probably a week later that the dad called. And he said, this is my house. I'm still in charge here. I still want to be in charge of decisions, and I know that my girls are really trying to help me get through this, but before there's any phone calls made to anybody else, it's going to be made to me, which I wanted to respect that for him. That was really important. When I went to visit them, and I think some of you may have experienced this, if you know someone that's experiencing, or you've heard of a friend that has a loved one that's experiencing some memory loss, typically when you go to visit those people, unless you know them personally, they don't show that. He looked perfectly fine to me. He spoke to me just like I expected that he would. The wife was very much in agreement with him. And then the daughters called afterwards and said, I can't believe that you're talking to my dad. We're the ones that reached out to you. This is the place that we want them to go. And now what we're worried about is that it's mom. Mom is now having the problem, and dad seems to be not as agitated as she was. So we really tried to just kind of work together through this. The place that they picked out was in Fort Worth that has cottages. So they weren't moving into a building, they were moving into a cottage, or a villa, they call it. And they got to design it, and they're really kind of excited about that because we talked about no more housework, no more working with the yard, that kind of thing. But there were several events during that time frame of getting their house ready to go. There were repairs that had to be made that were unexpected. Getting to the closing table, that there was a battle between the sisters, who's on first? And then there was a battle between the parents of, no, we're going to control this and you're not, and the parents correcting them that I'm still in charge. So it's important to have that, I think, to have those conversations ahead of time and just have an idea. In the event of, what would we do?
I would have regularly as well. I mean regularly. So I dedicate my life to working with families to be able to get through this. Families to be a better version of themselves at the backside, so the family relationships don't go apart. And it's some of these conversations need to be had a few different times from a few different angles for it really to settle in and to understand the whole context. Because, you know, take real estate for instance. For what we know of real estate in the first 30 or 40 years of our life, or that our family grows and we need a bigger home, right? Or we need to be closer to school. We work from this where our friends are. Think about how you buy real estate when you get older. Once you flip over and you're in asset preservation mode, right? It's an asset. It's a retirement asset that I hold off of this level. Or I'm using this, I don't want to spend my 7 hours of energy in a day, 3 of them taking care of a home. Those just aren't even part of the thought process. So when you have the conversations kind of more regularly about, you know, hey, if this situation were to happen, maybe walk through that and go. By the way, I do not recommend doing this at Thanksgiving dinner. We giggle, somebody's thinking it. It's, you know, their mindset of what they're in the moment will completely matter. And I don't want to run too far from that, but know 2 very real things about the human brain when we're starting to face things like this, like, oh my gosh, my parents are going to go. I mean, we all are, right? We know that. Some of us have figured that out. Like, nobody gets off this rock alive, right?
Studies show 100% of us are 100% going to die.
That's right. Yeah. So those are, but until that realization comes down to that, one of the things is I would say tunnel vision. When you're in the throes of an emergency, and I've been around emergencies for a lot of years, and the really bad ones, you get tunnel vision. It happens physiologically, like literally your sight closes in off of different things, and there's things you just won't hear and won't pick up. So when you get into having conversations, and if you don't think it's coming back and forth, ask them what they heard. You know, I say, you know, I want to do blah, 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 blah. What did you hear me say? Or if they're saying something back, if you feel you have to say, that's not what I said, I challenge you. Instead of saying, that's not what I said, or don't put words in my mouth, I challenge you to say, tell me what you heard. What did you hear me say? Right? It's their brain just can't flip through.
It's softer, and you're actually offering respect on both sides.
Right. I know I don't want to belabor this conversation, but I do think this is important to hear. In the industry I'm in, we had a family that we had to divorce. They had appointed a 4-headed power of attorney. All 4 children had to be in agreement about what was going to happen with mom and or with dad, because they love each other. They all hang out with each other. They enjoy each other. They're a great relationship. And we had to literally ask them to take mom out of our community, because after 6 months, they could not agree on what needed to be done. So please have the conversation. She had memory issues, so fortunately she was not aware of the dilemma that her children were placing on her and on us. But I just say that even the best kids who get along and love each other so well, and you've got the most close-knit family, when the crisis hits, everybody's going to have a different opinion on how things should happen, and we just need to be prepared for that. So that's just a cautionary tale.
Yeah. Well, I mean, leading into the slide that we have here, do you ever see adult children who are trying to be helpful but end up being controlling? I think a lot of times, based on the examples that we've given you, it's because, number one, they care for you, and they feel like you're not able to manage yourself any longer. And there, sometimes there's signs that would indicate that you're not able to take care of things any longer. But I think that that's when they want to step in, and they being your children, and sometimes it's not your children, it might be your nieces and nephew, your grandchildren, something like that. But I think that that's really what has taken place there.
Here's a great way that I've seen families take the sting off of that, or the surprise from that, is that they embrace that. When they go into the conversations, they're like, hey, the day's going to come where I'm not going to be able to do this. First of all, once you've laid it out there, they're like, okay, well, Dad's never going to be in denial. Dad understands he can't bury himself. I've never seen anybody knock that one out of the park. So something in your wishes are going to be done by them, right? So it's something I'm going to need you to act on my proxy, to act as my agent. And hopefully I'm going to get to tell you when that comes, but chances are I won't. And so we just need to be able to know how to figure out how to have a conversation with each other. If you think that that's where we're getting close, so that I can talk with you about that. It just takes away that element of uncertainty from the family side, that you're never going to get there, or where that moment might be. Love your idea of having a point person, like hugely important.
Yeah. Kind of like a mediator.
And they need it too, right?
Exactly.
It's not that we're humans, but I'm reminded of like dogs. Dogs don't care in the pecking order where they are. Once they're assigned wherever they are, they're great with that. They can go anywhere, an alpha or towards the back, but they just need a role. You need to know where they are. When we are at absolute chaos, human beings, we've got a nature of us that's similar to that. We just want to know where we fall in.
Julie, I like your point of view here.
Yeah.
This last one, talk about that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've run into is I will get a phone call every now and then, and no offense, but this will be offensive to some. It is typically an adult son who calls and says he needs to put mom somewhere. And I'm like, okay, first off, no. We're not going to put her anywhere. She's not a library book that needs to go back on a shelf. So, but what I have learned is they have the right intention. Their heart is to protect, is they care, that kind of thing. So typically what I will do is shift the conversation, and this is a tip that you guys can use in your own worlds, is to say, is there anything about your mom, in this case, is there anything about your mom that makes you feel she's incapable of making decisions for herself?
So would that be a question that you would ask your son? Is there anything about me that would make you feel that I'm incapable?
I think that in the right environment, yes, that could be a recipe for disaster. You have to know how to navigate that conversation. But I think the takeaway and how to use it and apply it maybe in your own lives is just to take a step back, be a role model. If you have other elders in your world that you have yourself personally, or experiences with those elders that you can share with your adult children, whether it's things you did well or things you really wished you'd done differently. Sharing that information is a catalyst for a conversation, and it is also an example of how to do things well. But I think that the other piece is just knowing that you can respect somebody's decision even if you don't agree with it.
A specific point that we've seen work well is mom and dad asking, hey, if I were to go to the hospital and it was just your mom, what would concern you most?
Right.
What do you think you would need? Or if it's a military term, so forgive me, we war game it, right? That's you walk through a couple of the scenarios. If this were to happen, right? If a tornado were to come through and you couldn't get a hold of us, and what would concern you most? What would you want to do? What would we need to do?
Right.
We did that when our kids were younger, right? We thought about where we wanted them to go if they got lost in the park, and what tree we might meet them by, or the carousel. There's an element of that will speak into that, and they get more comfortable. And they may tell you something that's a part of life that you don't think about, but it's a part of the situation they're going to have to manage to do that thing for you.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I think what I took away from this conversation too is, if it were your child, what would it look like to see it their way? What would it look like for you, from your point of view, to see it their way, and vice versa? Just to put yourself in that place if you were. And for some of you, you've been in that place before with your own parents in the past.
Right.
or a loved one in the past, but maybe step back and take a look at how does that feel? What does that look like? Is there something I'm missing?
Right. You mentioned, you asked, would you say that comment to your adult child, right? My response was it would depend, right? But I do think that there is a way to have that conversation where you're giving examples, you're planning ahead, you're sharing all of the information, and therefore that takes out the doubt. You're controlling the narrative because you've made these decisions. You're clear, you're confident. It's not, well, I was thinking maybe I might, I don't know, maybe I should move to a community and just sell the house. Versus, I'm tired of taking care of the house. I've done a little homework. I've checked a few places out. I actually have a friend that lives there, 2 or 3 of them, and I've really kind of made a decision, this is what I'm going to do. I'd love for you to go with me and check them out. Which one sounds more confident, right? So that would be how I would feel.
All right. What advice do you have for older adults who feel like their adult children aren't listening to them or are dismissing their preferences? Who'd like to go first on that?
Just reiterate on that. What did you hear me say if you're having that conversation? Something from that. This is probably where we've been talking about the grandkids. Yeah. This is probably a great one. Look, America does not know how it does family. It doesn't. It's not a secret that this is hard. I'm all over the country doing this. It is hard. And we have the same challenges, particularly technology. The way that we solve problems are so different, and the way that we get in our lives are so, as public as we think we are in social media, we're just not. So what I would say is, I think when we all live together generationally, and you had the third generation available, who tends to have capacity, they have time available, they have desire, they have no skin in the game in taking power from me. My kids, my grandkids, which I'm about to be grandfather, right? First time, will not be in a position to ever take anything from me off of that. It's a different kind of relationship. It's why my grandmother turned to me, right? She'd written me letters in the war, and then we had that relationship. I wasn't a danger from that. I only could pour in and lean in. And I bridged that gap between her and her kids because my mother and her siblings, they just weren't able to have those conversations. The emotion was too high. There was too many raw and difficult things for them. They weren't able to deal with at that particular time. They'd waited for a long time. That was a lot for me to carry out. But you know what, man? It did this. Don't deny your grandkids this. This created an incredible life for me. It gave me purpose, and it opened the door to what God was going to call me to do. And I would hope that I'm pretty confident there's pretty cool things that you can do with your grandkids. And I believe they can help communicate to your children and to their parents a little more effectively.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I just go back to making your choices and being confident in them and have a plan B. Because my father-in-law's plan was that he would die first and then my mother-in-law would die. That was the way it was going to be. Well, she got cancer and then she died first, and he was bitter because she didn't follow the plan. Mm-hmm. So I think we all have, people in our worlds where that has happened. So we just, make your choices, have a plan B in case it goes sideways and goes a different direction. Involve your grandchildren. I think that's a great suggestion. I will tell you, we see a lot of that in our community. We see a lot of grandkids that are involved, and it's wonderful. It's a beautiful thing.
I think it makes everybody feel more secure.
Absolutely.
That can happen.
Yeah.
It is absolutely appropriate and okay to assert yourself.
Yeah.
Sit down with your kids and be like, wow, this is happening. Literally what got my attention, even with my grandmother, was a dinner one night, and she said, it feels like life is happening to me. Mm-hmm. And that was what got my attention. Like, that was what I needed to hear, because that's not how I wanted anything to come off. I just was trying to, we'd put our name into too many lists, and we had too many people coming at us, and we were trying to figure that out. Mm-hmm. And that was overwhelming from that side. So she asserted herself. You can always do that. You can always do that. It's always appropriate to do that. And the earlier you do that, the better. It's not going to, if you think there's conflict there, like, get it out there. Have the conflict out there. At least everybody knows where that is. Others can see if you put light on it, it can be dealt with.
Yeah. Tony, I saw that one of the comments that you had, and I'd like you to elaborate on that. Write down what matters to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is look. This is, we use technology today in incredible ways, but taking the time to write down or journal, even if you can't communicate it off of that, there are so many ways that can come into play today. And it doesn't even require them to sit down and read the letter. With the tools that they're learning to use at work and AI and all the other things, those letters and things can actually be integrated to everyday decisions. I know because, personal experience in what we're doing with this, but that is, so take the time to put that down. If you don't feel you can have the conversation with somebody, have it with yourself. Write it down, put it in writing someplace. It's going to provide, there is a way that can be usable, I'm telling you. It can be used. So do that. It can be in handwriting. It can be in any of that.
And I think you also said your why. Like if you have a really strong opinion about something, make sure you include that. Because that just validates that you have been very thoughtful about your choice or your decision.
Practically, number one, why that gets missed, when that sun comes in, by the way, he usually flies in on Thursday, it says this has to be done by Sunday when I fly home to Florida.
My flight's at 6 a.m.
That's right. That's what we all get, right, when they come into that. When you're capturing that why, one of the big ones is why to stay where you might be. So my mother's in her 4th year of dementia diagnosis. It's a small town in Kansas right now, my 3rd parent project. But within that, we keep her there as long as possible because socialization up to the church that she's been at forever is so insanely important. But what we did is we came to agreement. When she can't remember that group of people, then she's going to move to Phoenix at that point in time, and she'll be in a memory care community where I can be there every day. And we can stop by and we can do that side. I'm struggling by not being there at this point in time in Kansas around that. But because she told me why that was important, I'm not going to rush into that. And we all could understand. We built a plan around it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that Tony mentioned about write it down, what I've been doing for myself as I'm running from here to there during my day lately, I think of something that I want to make sure that I remember, but I'm not in a place. I'm driving somewhere. I'm not in a place where I can actually pull over and write it down. So what I've been doing, and I notice that as time evolves, a lot of us, how many of you are doing text messaging? Just about everybody here. Well, what I'll do is I will create a text message for myself because now you can voice it, and I'll just say, don't forget when you get back to the office, you need to make sure and call so-and-so about what, so arrange the carpet cleaners, blah, blah. But then when I get back and I look at my text messages, I see that I have a voicemail from myself, and all those notes that I wanted to write down that I couldn't at the moment are right there for me to act on. Yep. It's been super, super handy. Okay, so what are some of the practical steps an aging parent can take to prepare for a successful family conversation about what's coming up, about future planning? So Tony.
Knowing one of the most difficult places where a senior move would typically start for us is I sit down with a question and I ask what they want to accomplish in life. I've literally had clients come out of a wheelchair, like leave a wheelchair once they got into that thing. And it could be, for my first parent project, for my grandmother, her anchor down there was 45, 50 bolts of fabric that all represented a project that she wanted to do but couldn't anymore with her hands. So it was, well, I want to do 2 more, just 2 more. We built an entire life around that. Like we moved around that, where she was going to go, what came, what didn't. Like it got the motion going. So think about what you want to accomplish. Don't think about how you want to wait to die or what you want to die. Think about how you want to live life. What are you going to do with the rest of this? God's giving you some more time. I've been called back. Some of us are frustrated by that. I get it. but on the other side, planning that forward gives a why and a reason that people can now move towards a joint goal. If it's a little one, like I want to host one more family dinner. I want to do Christmas dinner just one more time. Well, okay, you can't do that by yourself. Well, that's going to engage the other family members. It gives an opportunity to have all these other conversations unfold in a practical activity, and you can work something around that. So that's one of the key ones I would really start with is pick something you want to accomplish going forward and write around it.
And engage others. How about you, Julie?
Well, I think once you've done that, then I think that having a family meeting, right, like sharing your vision, sharing your information, not just verbally, I would encourage you to set a date, set a time. We just said this earlier, and you guys thought we were kidding, but we're not. It's not Thanksgiving. It's not Christmas. Don't do it when you've got 1,000 other things going on. Even if you have to include people virtually because they live at a distance, you can do that with technology today. Virtually, like a Zoom meeting, or even on the telephone, like if they're
Or
just
FaceTime.
on FaceTime. However you want to do that. Yeah, thanks for saying that. But I think having an agenda, type it out and hand it to everybody. You can even give it to them in advance if you want to. These are the things I want to talk about so that they're prepared, right? And then I think the other thing too is for yourselves to be clear about what your non-negotiables are. The things that are absolutely not negotiable. My dog is coming with me wherever I go. That is not a negotiable. Dad and I are going to stay together. I know he's got dementia. I am not going to have him stay someplace I'm not. That's my non-negotiable. Now, what that does is it sets the stage. Now, is that realistic? Maybe not, but it at least allows the other members of your family to know where you stand on something, and that it's not something to be argued with. It's something to be discussed.
Remember that why, too.
Yes, remember
right?
the why.
Why
exactly.
that sets it.
Why that's
right?
important.
Like I literally heard that one, right? Like
Yeah.
one of your dad's biggest fears is to be left alone.
Exactly.
And I promised him
Right.
25 years ago that that wouldn't happen. Help me make good on that promise,
Right.
right? They understand that why, they'll make a heck of a lot of how happen.
Absolutely, and they may help you redefine the
Right.
redefine it so that it's not that you're leaving them alone. That that does make it more comfortable and easier to deal with.
Well, and I do think that what both of you mentioned earlier, that would also be the time to secure what did you hear me say?
Right.
So that it's a lot of information, there's a lot of emotions that are going through everybody's mind of why are we doing this now?
Right.
But it's time to take that time. What was it that Mom was really trying to tell us or Dad was really trying to say? You know, ask that question and to make sure that before everybody disperses
Right.
at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning,
Right.
that we all feel like we're together and vice versa.
I'd also follow up with an individual and let them know, like, I'm gonna, over the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna talk with each of you individually. And that gives them a place where they don't have to jump into something that might be really chaotic. They can hold, they can restrain back, it can be emotional, and that can be okay.
I'm going to circle back to what I said at the very beginning, is about us not evolving in our relationships. If you are the adult in the situation and you are the one that is having the conversation, then exhibit how you want them to behave. By saying, I know we may not all agree on this, and I'm sure you have feelings about this too, and I want to hear those. But we're going to agree that we may disagree, right? So have that conversation, because it's not just a yes ma'am, no sir, or or lording over your kids, right? It's
Or saying nothing at all.
or not saying anything at all, exactly, right? So this is to be the role model, right?
The controversial thing I'll throw out is this. If money was what equaled control of the family ahead of time, who paid for things, when the family sat down and all of those things, that is going to be a memory tool. That's going to be a muscle that's been exercised over generations, over decades and decades. Expect that when that changes and it shifts to where someone else is taking those things on, there's probably going to be a natural inclination that everybody expects that might shift as well.
Right.
If you sense that, or that's where if that's important to you, or that's speaking to you in some way, think about how to start, creating an off-ramp for that. Where leadership is more than just who picks up the bill from that. Maybe it's who's providing guidance over the most difficult things or the hardest decisions we make as a family. Or, Mom does the leadership because she ensures that everybody comes together and has a conversation about those hard things when it comes out.
Yeah. I have a family right now that I'm working with. Dad has been gone a couple of years. They thought that Mom really wanted to move to assisted living. They'd actually picked out a place for her. I met with them last year. Everybody was moving forward to that goal, and Mom didn't make it. I have 3 sisters that are powers of attorney on this particular situation, and what's happening now is there's debt that was left from Mom. Medical bills, credit cards, that kind of thing. And they are now in a place where they've all agreed that they're going to share in the duty of paying those bills off. But one of the sisters shared with me the other day, I have a sister that doesn't have a job. What's going to happen if she can't do her part? We need to hurry up and get the house sold so that we have money to pay everything off. And now we're in a rush of, well, we really wanted to do this, but let's just get it done so that we can get that. And it was because things happened sooner than they thought. And again, going back to in the very beginning, had some of those conversations taken place earlier, we could have had a plan B that now they're having to act on. Keeping that in mind. So what strategies have you seen work well with families that are trying to align around the roles and responsibilities? I think we've pretty much lined that out. You know, what's one small communication change you've seen can make a big impact in a family situation? What's one small change? Well, I would say in my situation, I'm first generation, a lot of you know I'm first generation American for my family, and children were made to be seen and not heard, period. So in my family, my opinion didn't count. It was my mother's opinion or my father's opinion. That was the important thing. That whatever they said was the way it was going to go. And that for us caused a challenge, because when it came down to having a conversation with my mom my mom had macular degeneration, so she couldn't be on her own. And my stepdad had passed. So having a conversation about a plan B with her was a non-negotiable. It was difficult, and we had to really sit down and figure out what are the right words that we can use so that we sound respectful and she feels that way.
In the absence of good communication, people will listen to whoever the heck's talking. So you got to be careful on this one. And I think having that conversation with your kids and being clear to them as to what support looks like from your perspective, and giving them a chance to lean in and tell you from their perspective is a quick one to figure out if you're not aligned. And don't be surprised if you're not aligned. Like, that could be okay. Create the moment for that to happen, the awkwardness to get past it. Now you can start dealing with it.
I think along those lines, I think starting the conversation with, can we agree that things have changed? Can we agree that things have changed? That's just the place to start. And then, would it surprise you if I told you that X concerns me? Whatever that X is, right? If it's going to the mailbox because it's not level, or it's too far, or rugs everywhere, or whatever it is, right? The dog is too strong and can pull you, those kinds of things. Would it surprise you if I shared that with you? And then I love what Tony said was, what does support look like to you right now? Like, if
That's
you have
great.
that conversation,
Yes.
it's I want to support you, but what would that look like? How can I support you? Not how can I help, not how can I fix, how can I support you? And I love that.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
So we got roadblocks. It's easy peasy, all this way, we've got good notes, everything's going to work the way that we want. And then what happens when all the emotions break down? What are the effective ways for us to communicate so that both people feel heard?
Julie.
Okay, well, the number one roadblock that I experience, and I think Tony and I both actually said the same thing when we were asked this question, is denial. Everybody's in denial, whether it's the kids, it's the adult, it's the whoever, everybody's in denial over what's going on. So I think that's a huge roadblock. And I think that the thing that I had mentioned that was kind of an epiphany that I had not too long ago is we have a tendency to believe that we are independent. That's our goal, is to be independent. Well, folks, none of us are independent. We're all interdependent on each other. That's biblical. So
Yeah, that's good. That's
so
good.
there's
Yeah.
that. But we have this, and I don't know if it's just American, because I'm only from America, so that's the only thing I can speak to, but is this, we don't want to be a burden, right? I don't want to be a burden to anybody.
Yes.
But the reality is, is that you're also robbing an opportunity. And if we shift our brain from I have to I get to, that's a totally different concept, right? So I have to go do this, I have to go do that. Instead of saying that, it's I get to do this, I get to do that. How many people, I mean, you guys in your own world, if you had to help with your family members, you know, well, I've got to go to hop on a plane and I've got to go to Chicago to take care of mom and I've got to get rid of her stuff and all that kind of thing. I get to do this because there are people who don't have parents, who don't have children, and it's a blessing that you're getting to do. It's just a mind shift, right?
That habit, if that's a habit you absorb, it can shift an entire dynamic in a family. They'll pay attention to listen to you doing it. People notice it when you do it. They're like, huh. And it changes, and dynamics can shift. If you're in something where you're stuck and you're at a loggerhead and it's just not moving off of that, those are behavioral things we can do on our side that starts loosening that up and creating a different dynamic, a different environment, which we might be able to reapproach it in, a couple months. But.
How do you recommend navigating guilt, resentment, or fear that sometimes underlies these conversations?
I think you tack it on, flat out. Children, you probably all dealt, I'm hoping that many of you in the room were blessed to get to support an older parent too as they went through this, and that was something you got to do. So you probably remember there's an obligation that sits on there. Guilt does do that you're not going to do it well. This is something we only do a couple of times in our life, and we really don't want to get it wrong. We don't want to mess that up. There's a lot that comes with that. So things that you can do in communication ahead of time is not just about the individual. It's not about the plans or where you tell them you want the dog to go. It's the fact that you had the conversation to think about it. And they realize, when it comes down to that, I don't remember what Mom said, but I did remember that Mom said that the neighbor Peggy next door is the gal that knows this stuff. So you're giving them resources and assets to think through the problems when they get tunnel vision, where they're starting to work out of that. It relieves fear. It relieves fear. I use those same concepts, with our company when we go to help families that we used in combat to get troops to move and to understand and how to get through. What do? They tend to do it for the person next to them. And those are the other family members, the other folks that sit next to them. That's where they'll rally behind to get through that. And so give them those opportunities.
The only thing I'd add to that is just and this comes from a place of faith, is to speak out what you're thinking. Because if you discuss your feelings, it eliminates the power that it holds over you. Or if you encourage someone else around you who is exhibiting fear, that their motivation is fear, if you speak it out, it can't hold power over you any longer. It loses its power because it's no longer this unknown, unvoiced thing. It's being dealt with, and the light has been shown on it. So the one, I think we did talk about this, but we have a mutual friend that works with me in Oklahoma City, and she wrote a letter to her children, giving them permission and acknowledging that what they were going to face, whatever it was likely to be tough, and they were going to have to make hard decisions, and that she believed that they were equipped and that they were making whatever decision they felt needed to be made in the moment, and they were free to do so.
That's great.
And that was the most, it still gives me chills to think about it, because it was the most freeing and best gift that she could have ever given her daughters, to say, I trust you.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Okay.
What should someone do if their adult child is completely uninvolved or, on the opposite end, overly involved?
That's tough.
They're different, probably different strategies. They're really different strategies. But they guilt, fear, those things. My guess is if you've got somebody at one of the spectrums, everything we've just talked about is probably at play there, like roles in the family, how decisions were made. Look, the reality is the decisions we've made in how we live life in America over the last 80 years impacted how we're aging. We are living longer, but we're not living healthier, which is what everybody expected we were going to do, right? A lot of it's probably food and things we use and other stuff like that. And we're starting to figure that out, thanks be to God. But like, it didn't happen in our time, right? So I think if you've got somebody who's uninvolved off of that side, find the next generation is a place that would come from that. Churches are a huge peer group. 27% of baby boomer women didn't marry and didn't have kids. It's a huge population of that. And I think you're going to see many, many more resources popping up there. There are resources for that. You just need to come up sooner than later and as soon as possible. That's going to be your situation. And start finding that. Who knows if the uninvolved come back to the table? They might. They might, especially if they see things moving well and other people getting involved. I'd tackle that. I'll leave the hard one for you. Over-involved.
I just say identify boundaries and stick to them. Identify your boundaries and stick to them, and that's hard to say when you've got an overbearing person in your world, for sure. So if that's the case, and then if they are, if you're estranged, if there's an estranged situation, my encouragement is to invite them. You might be right. You may be 110% right that they're going to ignore the text or the call or the whatever, and they aren't going to respond, and they aren't going to, or they'll say they'll be there, and then they don't show up, whatever it is. But invite them. Have your boundaries. Know where they fit in the puzzle. And if they don't show up, surround yourself with people that you know you trust, and move forward with your plan. But they were invited.
Yeah, I think also along that same line of give them an opportunity to say no.
Exactly.
So at least you know that this is not going to work for them and they're not doing it because they feel it's an obligation. Give them an opportunity. So that gives you permission to move forward with the next. All right. Where are we at now? So if you could give one piece of advice to older adults preparing to have the talk with their adult kids, what would that be like? If you were giving them permission to have the talk with their adult kids, what would that be like?
Yeah, it's not a talk. It's a multi-part conversation. At a minimum, if it's the talk, recognize that and let them know that you're going to reach out one-on-one afterwards. It's going to follow up with those other sides, right? So if it turned into the talk and you're like, oh my gosh, what'd I do? We're having the talk. I didn't give that space from that, and that will help really pull things back in because it really is a series of things. Also, you're not going to get it all in the first shot. It's just too much. And too much is changing. Every 45 days, they invent a new part of the world and a new technology that completely changes everything, okay? That's a real thing, literally. I mean, we raise capital on that. So just know that, and it's okay for that. I think plan that way. Many conversations.
I would say I agree 100%, and I think that goes back to what we talked about before, about having an agenda, sticking to it, lead with facts, not emotion, because it's hard to argue facts, right? And that's a good place to start. And then also, if you feel like you would benefit from having a neutral third-party person join you in the conversation, then you have the right to do that. It should be somebody that the other party would feel is neutral, so not, let's say you've remarried and it's,
Right.
Somebody from another, where they feel threatened. Like let's make it an actual neutral party.
Yeah.
But I had a really dear friend, Beverly, who she had done her homework. She stayed in her home. She decided, I'm done taking care of my garden. I'm ready to move. All that, right? Her son was a physician, and Beverly was very active. She was 90 years old, but she was super active, and she would drive from Oklahoma City to Kilgore, Texas, on her own, frequently. So when she said she wanted to move, Kyle, her son, said, Mom, you don't need to move. What are you talking about? You're fine. There's nothing, you're fine. I'll come up and help you with the garden if you don't want to take it. He wasn't listening. So she was telling her friend this, and her friend sat in on the conversation with the family when they came up to help with the garden. they came up and she invited her friend over, Marilyn, over, and she said, will you just sit with me? And if you hear them not hear me, or you hear them shut the conversation down, will you help me rephrase it so they will hear me? And that's exactly what happened. Well, what we learned was Kyle, as a physician, had people who were 70 years old, 60 years old, who were in far worse shape than Mom. So in his mind, Mom did not need to move. She didn't use a walker. She could still walk a block. She was fine. She goes to the grocery store. She can see all these things, right? So he didn't hear her say she didn't want to take care of the house anymore. She wanted to be in a community where she could live with other people. And that was the difference maker.
What's one myth or misconception you wish families would let go of when it comes to planning for later life transitions?
The mom and dad don't want to hear it from them. They don't want their guy. Mom and dad, it is their life, but they take the truth of wanting to be in control of, well, they don't care what I'm going to say. They're going to do what they're going to do. And it almost kind of goes back to that, 7-year-old brain or that relationship from that. There'll be some children up there who think, Mom and Dad will tell me if they want me to get involved in this. That flat out is happening right now. It's a majority of the poll. Because there's enough in front of them that's keeping them busy. These things, right? They're shiny enough. So.
This is for both parties. Talking about it doesn't make it happen. So there's this, if I say it, so I always joke about the conversation. This is how it goes. Mom says, hey, I want to have a meeting. I want to talk about end of life stuff, burial plans. What? Did you get a diagnosis? What was the matter? Oh my gosh, Mom, you are just so dramatic. Seriously? Right? That's how that goes. Or the daughter says, hey, Mom, I was just curious. Do you have a funeral plan? Or, what? Do you think I'm dying just because I have a pain now? Oh my gosh, right? So we can't win.
Yeah.
So I think it's being okay with it, being honest with yourself, right? And then just giving space for the conversation. Because again, back to studies show that 100% of us will 100% die. So there you go.
All right. Well, we're going to take a moment here as we finalize. We've got the last couple of slides that we're going to talk about today. One of the reasons that we asked Tony to share information with us today, as you can see, he's got quite a background when it comes to working with all types of people. But we also wanted to share a little information, which is in your handout, about parent projects and how that could actually fit in with the communication that we talked about today, and how that might be a vehicle for you that would be helpful. So Tony, I have a question for you here. How can families use the technology tools, keeping in mind that we're all at different levels with technology? Our kids are much more involved in some cases than we are, but then again, as we talked about earlier when I was asking the audience how many of them were texting, I will tell you personally, for me, that has evolved with the clientele that I've worked with for years. I've seen more people now saying, oh, this is my phone number, but text me. It'll be easier for you to get in touch with me. So that being said, tell us about what is Parent Projects about, and based on communication, which we've been discussing today, how does that fit?
Yeah, so Parent Projects is oriented for your children, right? But it's oriented in a way for them to organize with their siblings, or maybe it's a neighbor or other people that are going to be involved in carrying out the wishes of their parents. It came from personal experiences, and now we've had thousands and thousands of families that have come through that have shared with us and walked through what's going on. We started leveraging the newest of technologies and artificial intelligence to be able to guide families through what they're going through. So this is not something in this room typically that most of us are interested in jumping into and doing and learning into this side of our life. What we are very much looking forward to, though, is helping your children get their head in the right space to approach this in what we call a lean-in culture. Parent Projects builds a lean-in culture, and it helps the families just what documents come into one place. It also takes things out of like places like Facebook, where they're talking about it, or other things that are risky and not a safe place to really be having those conversations. And it moves it into a platform where the family owns all the data. The information is kept and built and belongs to the family at that level. So families are using it to gather things in one place, get their thoughts in one place. When we're dealing with mom in a conversation, we have her medications in there, we know her appointments. That's where we think.
I see it like a portal.
Yeah.
You know, most of us have a portal,
Yeah.
and I see it like that.
Yeah, and through affiliates and businesses who know how to work. For instance, I mean, you work with last-time homeowners really, really well, right? And family members that are working with that big asset, it's big and emotional. Families tend to call real estate agents really early, like before they're ready to go. And you get that question, right? Mom needs to sell her house. That needs to come up.
Right.
Or when those come, this Parent Projects is designed for that place for them to start putting themselves together and thinking about it, to pull in their conversation and their thoughts in one spot as they're working through. And so through our affiliates, she sponsors licenses for the families to come through and to use Parent Projects. And that's what we're working on every day, build stronger families, fewer sad stories.
Well, what interested me when we first started talking about it, and the reason I use that term portal, is my mother lived in New Mexico. And when she was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. Well, my other sister is in Missouri, and my other sister is in Denver, and my brother is in New Mexico, but not close to where she was. So I fashioned it to a place where we can have conversations together when we're not always available on the phone.
Right.
My brother was the one that was meeting with the doctors a lot of the time. So some of the results that we would see from the doctors, we were able to put into that portal and share information back and forth. I will say this, where things are a little bit different, and I think Parent Projects can be helpful. A lot of you know that my husband John just had a knee replaced. Well, I thought that his doctors would know that automatically, that there was a replacement. Well, what I found out is Methodist Hospital doesn't talk to any of the others. I mean, at Methodist or MCA over here, they have a totally separate system. So the only way his doctor would know that he had a knee replacement would be him verbalizing it and saying, hey, I got a new knee now, because those documents were not there. So I saw that as another place that would be a great fit.
Right, in making it, what we use the AI to do is to organize all of that information. There's a lot
Tell them what
of
AI is. A lot of people have heard it but don't know.
So, yeah, at that easiest level, it's actually mathematics. It's the same computer science. It's been around since the 50s. It's just, it thinks differently. They're different, they're more complex math problems. But it turns the human language into ones and zeros. And then it does math in order to understand when you ask it a question, to relate that question to the English language, to figure out which is which, right? Yeah. Understand the context of what's happening, and then answer a question. It can absorb, or it can look through several pieces of information, and it can develop and make recommendations on what the family member could do next. And that is a part of really what's key for a family when they're working through a Parent Project. It's not everything that's got to be done. It's good to know that it's all here, but they need to know what's the next best step. And that's what AI can help do there. It can help them figure that out.
I'm gonna brag on you guys, because what they do is proprietary. So you were talking about your sister's siblings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a text thread. Well, you can't upload documents from the doctor's office on a text thread. Okay, so we email. So then there is an email thread. But they have, with Parent Projects, the beautiful thing is it's all safe. So for those of you who don't know cybersecurity is a thing, cybersecurity is a thing. And even if you think that because you've got your family Facebook group that's private, it's not being followed, you're wrong. So, anyways.
And we are, look, we're an evolving technology. We're changing, because we care and grew out of this, we're changing the way that data works. We actually are bringing the way that Europe handles data to the United States, where it's called, you have a right to be forgotten. It's your data. You have it. It should sit here. It shouldn't sit at your doctor's office that you check out when you want it. It should be you, and you should have that. And with Parent Project, or really with platforms like that, we're teaching the United States how to use data a little more appropriately.
So there, like I mentioned before, you have a flyer, and if you have more questions about that, please, reach out. We'll get you the right answers. We'll get you, if we don't know it, we'll get you with the people that do. But it's something to consider when it comes to working together with and communicating, collaborating with all those people that care for you and vice versa.
Can I take a shot at it? And I didn't, thank you for doing it. I genuinely did not expect actually to put that up. And I usually won't while I'm out there. But, or at one of these I'm talking. I would say this is what success looks like for one of those. You have a flyer that's there. It's really for one of your adult children. As they start collecting the information you're pulling together, tell them and scanning that QR code, that's a place where they can store that where they have it. And it's theirs. It runs up with them. It's protected. It's provided by them. It's being taken care of this first year here. It starts pulling all that together so you guys can start having those conversations. That's how it's intended. And when they're there, if they've got questions, they'll see it, they can chat on there. We'll answer those questions.
And that's something that, like we mentioned early on, we want to do a workshop, and we really want that workshop to be a part of what we've learned today, but from the reverse side. How do we speak to our parents? What are some of the things we need to know? What are some of the questions we need to ask? What are the tools that might be available for us to have to make it successful? And that would be, the parent project would be a place to, parent projects would be a place to do that. And that's important because, Tony, you reminded me, it's not parent project.
No.
Parent projects. Right?
Parent projects.
Yeah. Families have multiple in there. I have one for my mom. I have one for my dad. I have one for my grandmother. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that Debbie set one up for her family as well with the situation that she just went through.
Yep.
All right, so we are now at this spot. Of course, I'm going to remind you real quick, feedback's important. Please take a moment to do that before you leave today. Questions that you might have from our experts today. Troy.
I just have one quick thing. You say it was an app? I just looked in the app store. I couldn't find it.
Thank you.
Repeat the
So
question.
he asked about it being in an app store. So it's a web application. When you scan a UR code, you'll see that it's built as a web application. And,
So you have to have a QR code.
The QR code that she provides is actually what's going to get it to you for free for a year. That's how she pays for it. So that's an important side from that. Parentprojects.com, though, they can find access to the web app for what they use there. Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, Troy is one of our education partners. Anybody else have a question that they'd like to ask today? Well, I want you to know that it's been a great honor for us. Yes?
I just wanted to say something about, I don't remember who said it, but we're all living longer, but we're not living healthier. And I think that is going to be on my mirror now. I live longer, but I have to get healthier. That was a really good thing to say. Whoever chose that.
So your suggestion is that we put that on our mirror in front of us,
Absolutely.
that we're living longer, but we are not living, we need to live healthier. That's great. That's great. Anybody else?
Since we don't have any questions, I'm going to share something I wasn't going to share, but I think this is important. I was just on vacation, and as we do, we pick up a book to read. I am not typically a fiction book reader, but this book, The Memory Library by Kate Story, is fantastic. And it talks about all of this, but in a story format. And it is beautiful. So I highly recommend, even if you have people in your world that you think this is a hard conversation to have, maybe you can start with having them read a book.
That's great. The Memory Library by Kate Story, Storey.